What's up, YouTube peeps and barbecue freaks? Thank you guys for joining me today for another edition of Tito Tuesday. Now, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. Also, if you're new to my Tito Tuesdays, what I do here is I take your questions and answer them in next week's video. So if you have a question, barbecue, whatever, leave it in the comment section below of this video and I will answer it in next week's Tito Tuesday. So I know I took a little bit of time off, but we're back. So let's get this underway. First question today is from Daniel Garcia. And he says, hey James, what's your opinion on the Oklahoma Joe Bronco? I just started out learning to smoke and this was my first purchase. So I've never cooked on the Oklahoma Joe Bronco. I have seen it, and from everything that I've seen, it looks like a really great cooker. It looks like a really cool cooker. I don't know how it cooks, but I haven't, I follow quite a few people who have one, and I haven't heard anything negative. I mean, everything I've heard has been positive so far. I had an Oklahoma Joe offset smoker that I really liked, and I thought it cooked well. I think they produce really good products. So I'm going to say that it's, probably a really good smoker, especially if you're just starting out. Price-wise, it's not very expensive, which is good, but you can still, cook quite a bit of meat on there, depending on what you're cooking. So for someone like you, Daniel, who's just starting out, I think that is a really good cooker, for like the backyard cook, or the backyard cooker, or someone who's just learning. Again, you're not spending a ton of money right off the bat on a smoker, but you're still getting what I'm going to call, even though I've never cooked on one, a really good product. Only because, like I said, I've had Oklahoma Joe's products before, smokers before, and I thought they were really great. So if that's your first purchase, I think it's a good one. So hope that answers your question. All right, next up is Jason Oman. He says, hey, James, enjoy the videos. Thank you, Jason. I truly, truly appreciate it. Do you think there's any difference in taste between meat smoked on an offset or traditional offset versus a reverse flow? I'm going to say no. I've used both numerous times, and I think they both turn out great. I can't say one is better than the other because a lot of it depends on the maker of the cooker. Some offsets aren't as good as other offsets, again, depending on the manufacturer of your smoker. And the same thing would apply to an offset. A lot of that depends on, what kind of smokestack or how big your smokestack is, your firebox, things like that. So I can't say that one is better than the other, but I can say, having cooked on multiple offsets and multiple reverse flows, that I don't tell a ton of difference taste-wise in the meat whenever I'm cooking on either one. You're still using raw wood or like wood chunks or wood logs on there, so you're getting that good wood flavor. The airflow is the only difference. So between those two, it just really depends on which one you like. I think they both produce great barbecue. One might cook a little better than the other. Again, just depending on the manufacturer, which is a huge thing to keep in mind, because not all smokers, whether they're reverse flow or offset, are created equal. So taste-wise, I don't. I haven't been able to tell the difference between offset and a reverse flow. Now, I do like the reverse flow. I like both, but I kind of lean a little more to the reverse flow. I just think that those cook at least the ones that I've cooked on, just a little bit better. But taste-wise, I'm not able to tell much difference in the flavor between the two. So if you're trying to decide, do I want to go with a reverse flow or an offset, you can't go wrong with either one, in my opinion. So, all right, next up, we got Kelton Graham. And he says, hey, James, in your opinion, does the type of briquettes you use make much of a difference? If so, what sort of difference do you notice between the various brands? So the briquettes do make a difference, or the different types of briquettes. The main difference necessarily isn't flavor, but I'm going to say the main difference is how they burn. You have, if you took, like, let's say Kingsford Original versus their championship blend, I'm sorry, not the championship, their competition briquettes, those are designed a little different. One has a higher BTU, so if you're trying to get, let's say if you're doing steaks and you're trying to get that pit hotter, you might want to go with one that has a higher BTU because it burns hotter. Taste wise, if you're not going with one that has flavor to it, like I know Kingsford makes like an apple flavored charcoal briquettes, because I bought a bunch of them, so I know they make it. If you're not using a flavored one and you're just using, let's say, the Kingsford for an example, the regular and their competition briquettes, they burn differently. I don't notice a whole lot of taste difference between the two. It also, if you're taking, let's say, Kingsford versus a B&B are a little bigger, so you're going to get a longer burn time out of those. That would be the main difference. I don't notice a ton of difference in flavor if I'm using, let's say, a B&B compared to a Kingsford. In my opinion, I think it's pretty much the same. Now, it changes if if you add in lump compared to, or you start comparing lump to briquettes. That changes because they burn different. Lump is, briquettes are kind of compressed, so it takes a little longer to burn, where lump is more natural, so you get a cleaner burn. But if you're just taking a regular briquette versus another briquette, brand wise, B&B and Kingsford, for an example, I've used both many of times, and I don't notice a difference in flavor, but there is a difference in burn time and how they burn. In fact, I was just talking to a buddy yesterday about this, and we were talking about he was trying to cook steaks and trying to get it up to a really high temp, and he couldn't get it past like 525 with his regular Kingsford briquettes, and that's because their BTU is not as high as some of the other ones. So that would be the only difference, how they burn. Taste wise, personally, I don't notice a ton of difference. So if you're thinking, does B&B taste better? Does Kingsford taste better? Just recently, I started using a bunch of briquettes from Walmart, and I really like those. I didn't think I was going to, but those, they really consistent burn. But again, taste wise, I don't notice a difference between the different brands, but you will get a different burn time. All right, next up, Victor Bitter. What's up, Vic? It says, digging a new format. Appreciate it. He bought a 1.5 pound tri-tip recently. Doesn't seem to have very much marble in. They were really cheap, so he pounded them out. He's not sure he wants to barbecue them. How would the cut go? In a stew or curry? I usually cook stews or curries for 3 to 4 hours. Would it be going all stringy by then or tough? How do you think that would play out? So, Victor, here in Texas, we don't do a whole lot of tri-tip. I think I've done tri-tip once or twice, and those I smoked on the smoker. I've never used them in a stew or curry, so I'm not sure when it comes to tri-tip how. When it comes to tri-tip, I'm not sure how well that works in a stew or a curry. If someone else uses tri-tip a lot, if you can help answer that question below. I'll say this, if I had a tri-tip and I was trying to, in fact, I'm making a dish right now that would probably go really good with the tri-tip. If I had it for this dish that I'm doing right now, I would just cube it up and make a stew. I'm making some kind of guisada. So I would use it like in a stew, but again, I've only cooked that I think once, maybe twice. So I'm not very familiar when it comes to tri-tip. It's just not very big down here in Texas. So we don't do a whole lot of it. So I'm not sure. I quite honestly, I don't have enough experience with cooking tri-tip to say if you cook it, you know, this amount of time it's going to get stringy or it's still going to be tough. You need to go longer. I'm sorry, Victor, but I just, again, we just don't do that down here in Texas very much. Some of you West Coast guys or some of you folks who are in other areas who do a lot of tri-tip, if you guys have some information that can benefit Victor, please leave it in the comment section below in this video. I'd appreciate it, and I'm sure he would. But again, Victor, I apologize. We just don't do tri-tip down here in Texas. So I've never used it in anything except on the grill. So I don't know if, you know, how it turns out if you use it in a stew. I would try it in a stew, but I can't tell you if you go 3 or 4 hours, this is, you know, what's going to happen to it. So again, if one of you guys can help answer that below, I would truly, truly appreciate it. All right, next up is we got Randy Bellar. I hope I pronounced the last name right, brother. I'm sorry if I didn't. He says, I'm going to look into getting into competition barbecue starting in 2020. What would your advice be for me to do to get started? Well, Randy, I actually have a video series, and I'll try to leave a link below in this video in the comments section. I did I think it was a 3-part series, just getting started into barbecue competitions, things that I think that you would need, from your knives to your containers, your injections or your injectors, a lot of things that people don't, a lot of small things that people don't realize that they might need that can really make a difference or really help out and kind of make that transition into barbecue competition or competition barbecue a little smoother. Check out those videos. They might be helpful. I'm going to say, you know, for me, what I did is I started January of 2015 competing. All of 2014, I took that whole year to practice different techniques, different recipes. But the main thing I did was whatever pit that I was going to be cooking on in competitions or whatever pits I was going to be cooking on, I really worked on getting to know those pits. In my opinion, if you know your pit, if you really get to know your pit and know how to run a consistent temp, you could cook absolutely anything. So one, I'm going to recommend working to know your pit. I think that's huge. Again, if you can run a consistent temp, you could cook absolutely anything. Another thing I did is I would set up in my front driveway an area like if I was cooking at a competition, and I would start my cooks depending on what time the meats need to be turned in. For an example, here in Texas, a lot of the cook-offs we do, chicken is turned in at noon. So while I was practicing at home, I was getting my times down. I would start, you know, 9:30 or 10, getting the fire started, getting my chicken injected rub, and just working my times just to make sure that if something popped up, I knew how to handle it once I get out there. Run, and I'm not sure where, you know, what sanctioning body that you're going to be competing in, and you know what their time frames are, but take those time frames and cook in your driveway or your backyard, whatever. Cook as if you were at a cook-off getting ready to turn in. A lot of times you run into obstacles that will that you can't even think of right now, or you might not think of right now, that could hinder your cook time. Or, for example, I was at a cook and I had my fire lit, so I thought, come to find out, it had died out. Just because, I mean, those are just things that you run into sometimes. So you want to make sure that should something like that happen, you know how to make it work. You know, you can adjust to that. But practice at home, your time frames, you know, for here, chicken is 12, ribs are at 130, brisket is at 3. So with all those 3 meats, if I knew that I needed my ribs done by 1:15, I go backwards from there, and, you know, that's when I start my ribs. That's when I start trimming. Well, I usually trim the night before, but seasoning and injecting. I wanted to make sure that if something came up at a cook-off that I was, prepared to handle it. And just, go into it. When you first start off, don't think or don't get disappointed if you go into it and nothing happens. Like you don't get a call or you don't do very well at all. That's going to happen. There are cook-offs where I do really, really well. Even like today, now, where I do really, really well. And then I run the same recipes, everything the same at another cook-off, and absolutely nothing. It's a crapshoot sometimes, depending on where you're cooking, judges. There's a lot of things that, can play a factor. So don't get disappointed. Stick with it. If this is something that you're really passionate about, listen, some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug. So just keep at it, man. I know for me, when I did it, man, it was so addictive. After walking that first tray up, I was hooked. But that first year when I first started, I didn't have any success at all, like very, very little. And it was starting to get a little disappointing. But keep at it. You could shorten your learning curve if if there's someone in the area that puts on a barbecue class. I think those are invaluable. Some of them can be pretty pricey, but it's a good way to shorten the learning curve. In the long run, you save money. You can make your money back with one call. Don't be afraid to do something like that. And you're making an investment in you. So I'm really high on if there's a class, and I've taken several of them. If there's a class in your area, I would say pull the trigger, take it, shorten the learning curve. But just stick with it. Again, you might come in dead ass last, but you got to start somewhere. You got to see where you're at compared to other cooks, and stick with it. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't be afraid to make changes. But also, I think another big mistake that people make when they just start getting into cook-offs is, they have this recipe, they have the idea of what they want to do. They turn it in and they don't get a call at all. And then instantly they're like, I got to change it. And they start changing the recipe completely. Do not do that. Start off with your recipe. Do what you do. Make small tweaks. Let's say if you're changing a chicken recipe, for an example. People will go in and just change it completely and still not hit and can't figure out why. I would say, if you're going to make a change to a recipe, just make one small change. Try that out, see how that goes. If you're still not having success, maybe change something else a little bit at a time. So that way, that this is all you really needed to do. You didn't need to completely wipe away your recipe and switch to a completely different one, because then you're going to end up in the exact same spot. So if you make changes, make them small, but don't get discouraged. Stick with it, and I think you're going to have a great time. It's a blast. The friendships you make, the camaraderie between pit masters. It is an awesome experience, and I'm really excited that you're about to jump into that. I think you're really going to enjoy it. But and when you do, once you start competing, if you have any questions, man, don't hesitate to reach out to me and kind of pick my brain. I'm more than willing to help out any way I can, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. All right, Andrew Davids. Hey, James, new sub here. Found you through T-Roy. I appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the Head Country BBQ Sauce Recommendations. That stuff is money. It is. Look, I got one right here. I have another one right here. I've got tons of bottles of Head Country everywhere. It's some good stuff. I really, really enjoy it. Anyway, any other flavors? Yeah, so the Head Country, I like the apple habanero, obviously. This is really good on brisket. Actually, it's good on all three, brisket, ribs, and chicken. However, they have a hot and spicy. I've got it somewhere. Look, so I got more bottles here. Head Country. I use this stuff a lot. Look at this. Head Country, Head Country, Head Country, Head Country. So this is a good sauce. It's one I really, really like. They have a hot and spicy that's really good. And I'll give you a little tip. If you mix 50-50 hot and spicy with the original, excellent on beef. But besides the Head Country, another sauce that I like to use, get this out of the way real quick, is this Texas pepper jelly Craig's barbecue sauce. I really like this on chicken. It's actually really good on chicken and ribs. So this is another sauce that I like. There are a number of sauces you can use, but these two brands are some of the ones that I use the most. So again, this is Craig Sherry's regular barbecue sauce. And he also makes a bunch of, there's these Texas pepper jellies here, these rib candies. These go great when you combine the two, depending on the flavor, on what you're cooking. Excellent. So those are that would be another sauce recommendation. So I hope you, if you try it, I hope you enjoy it. All right, guys, that's all the questions I have for today. If you have a question that you would like me to answer, leave it in the comment section below in this video, and I will answer it in the next episode of Tito Tuesdays. Again, thank you guys for joining me. I truly, truly appreciate it. Hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up. I would truly, truly appreciate it. I will see you guys next time. Take care.